Hello, Pierre. Nice to have you on this video.
Hello, Guy. Pleasure to be here.
For all of you who, for the first time, joined us, this is the third video we did in the DORA series, I may say so. DORA being the Digital Operational Resiliency Act, which has been issued in the EU and is applicable to almost all financial actors to a large degree. So it's a pretty important thing, and it's a European regulation, and there's a deadline for implementation, which is the beginning of 2025. In the previous video, we have looked at the general things about the general considerations about DORA. We have looked in the second video into third-party risk management, and all these two videos we have done together with Pierre, so I recommend you to have a look at those. Also, we published a few days ago a biography about Pierre. For all of you who don't know him, please have a look at that. Pierre has an amazing career as a CISO and in various functions in the cybersecurity industry. So hopefully, I'm sure it could be an inspiration to many of you. So you will see those also in the show notes of this video. So again, Pierre, thanks so much for taking the time to share with our audience your insights into DORA.
Thank you very much. But let's not minimize your experience as well, which is very impressive too. So I guess collectively, we bring many, many years of experience in the cybersecurity field.
Thank you. And hopefully all this for your benefit, or the benefit of the audience. At the end of this video, I would like to recommend you that we make some very strong insight views. We go a little bit beyond DORA with two things which we think are really, really important to understand. So please stay with us until the end, because I think this is so important to understand. So we'll go first to the incident response part, which is the focus of this video. But I think the general conclusion at the end will be of a great benefit. So this DORA 3, as we call it, episode, is really based on the incident response part of DORA. But any comments from you, Pierre, about DORA in general?
No, DORA is very much based on the same principles as GDPR. So we hope that it will have some significant teeth. Time will tell. 2025 is in 1 year from now. I'm seeing some financial institutions in Europe and outside Europe paying attention to DORA, but I'm very much looking forward in the way the regulator will implement and enforce DORA.
So interestingly enough, some of my clients also work on NIS2. So that's a sister agreement, which is mostly focused on critical infrastructure and also important companies. So it's outside the financial sector, but very much with the same objective. And I think the geopolitical situation has made now security a lot more important than it was maybe a couple of years ago before the war in Ukraine and all the things which came afterwards. So I think both the government and also the regulator have also this in mind. So it's not just N+1 regulation, if I may say so. So the focus of this video is essentially about incident response, which is a very new element or a focus point of this regulation. So any insights from you, Pierre, about why this is different in this regulation?
Well, the incident response element in DORA brings more structure, which is something that is lacking, that is often lacking. For example, some decision point when you have an incident happening to be able to determine the severity of an incident. Usually this is left to the decision of the cybersecurity team or the board, whereby DORA is putting more structure into that, which I think is very beneficial.
I think same on this too. Now suddenly classification is important because you have to report certain things, and also timing of the reporting is getting a big thing. So that's suddenly a big thing at large, very, very different from the past. So what is the context about incident response in the DORA area? Because obviously DORA is a bigger regulation, so there are many bits and pieces which fit into the incident management or incident response side.
Well, the DORA's incident response contains different elements, such as the ICT risk management framework. It specifies that the organization must have an established risk management, which is often the case in the finance industry, but it makes it a must, which for some organizations is a good thing. It specifies that there must be an incident detection and response process. Again, we see that most of the finance industry in Europe do have some incident detection and response processes. It remains to be seen whether these processes have been thoroughly tested and kept up to date to cater for the evolution of technologies and evolutions of new business strategies inside the organizations. It also motivates the development of business continuity plans. BCP is a big monster because very few organizations truly test the BCP. So they tend to have a document that is on its own, has never been tested. And so DORA also motivates or enforce regular testing and exercises, which I think is critical. We have to develop a muscle. Every organization has got to develop muscles and to teach the organization on how to behave when a significant incident happens, and to force these financial organization or critical infrastructure in the context of NIS2 is definitely a most welcome thing. I am amazed at the number of financial organizations that have never really tested, even on a tabletop level, have never really tested the incident response. It must be said that in the context of financial organizations, many financial organizations are member of the FSI-SAC. FSI-SAC promotes some regular tabletop exercises. So for these organizations that belong to FSI-SAC, it's probably something that is already known. But again, overall, DORA in the incident response requirement sets up the right principle and processes to ensure that the organization will be more effective at addressing incidents, which I think is a fantastic thing.
And I think the regulator learned from the GDPR guys that have been making incident response a cornerstone, forces everybody to do something about it and to report it and make things visible. So they clearly learned their lesson from that side. I think this would be very powerful. Now, do I have to report everything, or how does that work?
Well, DORA classifies ICT related incident as major ICT related incident or not. And so they have to report every major ICT incident. Also, the discussion as to whom should they be reported. If you take the example of a bank with branches all over Europe, if an incident happens in a branch located outside of the headquarters, outside of the country of the headquarters, you've got to decide where you're going to report. And DORA establishes the framework so that we know how to and where to report.
I think also, the regulator is always worried about systemic problems. I think there will be, because that will destroy or affect the confidence of the market or the customers into banks. So that is their biggest priority, avoid by any means this kind of situation. And I think because now everybody's forced to report, they can see when some issues have more systemic nature. And I'm sure they will also take action if that's so. Classification and then basically possible reaction by the authorities if it's more systemic.
What's missing, however, is what I would call the near misses. And of course, you don't report a near miss, and they should be, but that's probably for another version of DORA or some discussion amongst the stakeholders. But not only the ability to report on an incident, which is mandated by DORA, but also near misses. That is, something happened and we were very close to have an incident. A good lesson learned here, and that's also information that needs to be shared within the community, in the finance community, so that we learn from these near misses, not only from the real incident. This is equally important to me, because sometimes we succeed or we avoid an incident just because we were lucky. we were using the right firewall, and if we had used another firewall, perhaps it would have been breached, or the attack took place on a day where the people were very alert. So these kind of things are very meaningful and very useful to be shared as well.
So obviously there it's I think the near misses. I agree with you. I think it's probably we have 80% near misses and 20% incidents or any kind of proportion. So these should be indicators that something has to be done or something has to be reinforced. Now, what kind of information are the different financial actors supposed to report to the regulator?
Well, DORA mandates that whenever you have an incident, you need to be very prompt in reporting about the incident. The information that you have to communicate should be about the incident type, the observed severity and impact. But we all know that your understanding of a severity and impact on day one might not be the final severity and impact, but you've got to report whatever you have in front of you, the timeline of events, and also the action taken. What are you doing to mitigate this incident? Estimation of duration of disruption and a potential recovery plan, which again, if you have to report that within the first 24 hours, it's guesstimate, because you don't really know how deep the incident might go, and whether there is any domino effect. But in any event, you've got to report something. And also, you have to assess the regulatory breaches induced by this incident, and report your understanding on these regulatory breaches.
Yeah, I think you implied already. Generally speaking, there's like a sequence, early notification of an incident, maybe then a more clear estimate, and maybe an intermediate report and final report. So there's obviously reflects the life cycle of the
I must stress on that one that proper incident response, from my experience, and I do believe that you have similar experience, Guy, requires two types of team to intervene. When you have an incident in front of you, you need to dispatch a team that will help to assess the situation and try to mitigate as quickly as possible. This is what I call the fast team. And their sole job is to understand what's happening, start negotiation with the bad guy, and mitigate. And you've got the slow team, and the job of the slow team is to collect all possible evidence, do the forensics, so that eventually, perhaps few months later, they will be able to generate a final report that will explain the full extent. And we should not believe that a slow team can be a fast team at the same time. We really need two different operations, because there are two different types of activities that need to be performed, and they're not directly compatible. So that's just an advice for organizations who do not yet have incident response. They need to consider that there is a demand for incident response fast and a demand for forensics slow.
Makes sense. And I think that's why also I think we made a review of actually a tool called Flexible IR, which allows us to have playbooks, and to have trainings and drills done. I think we're not becoming perfect incident responders by just trying to remember what we are supposed
That
to do.
doesn't work. That just doesn't work. We have to test, and test again.
Now, obviously, we have covered in our previous episode third parties, and more operations are outsourced, or the work is divided between the main financial institute and maybe any what they call in Luxembourg, where I'm staying, is called professional service providers, PSFs, or others. So that's a network of people who together deliver the service. So any thoughts or any obligations towards third parties when it comes to
Well,
incident
it's
response?
an important one. To me, it's an important one, because when I speak to my friends who are CISOs in the finance industry, especially in the sophisticated organizations, it is very clear that the top risks for every big finance organization is really on the third party. The risk that you do not have full visibility on the weaknesses of one of your third party, and an attack takes place through the third party. So this is critical. And the need, what DORA mandates, but this is also common sense, is that you have to identify and assess the third party dependencies. So you need to know the name and activities of all these organizations that have some form of privilege in accessing your environment, or do have a copy of some critical or sensitive data. You have to have a contractual agreement, and also kind of a trusted relationship with the third party, so that they are mandated, they are contractually obliged to contact you whenever an incident happens, if this incident could have a potential impact onto your organization. And you have to integrate their third party incident response plan into their own framework, which also means that I strongly suggest that for organizations, third party organizations that you have identified to be very close to you, what we call a type A, that is the most sensitive one, the most dangerous one, I strongly suggest that you organize tabletop exercise with them. So whenever you test an incident response, you do that in collaboration with the third party, so that collectively we learn on how to operate with each other if incident happens. As you know, Guy, in cybersecurity, it's not a matter of whether an incident will happen, it's a matter of when an incident happens. We know it will happen, so we'd better be ready, not only in isolation in our own organization, but we should also have this continuous relationship with the cybersecurity team of the third parties, and also the contractual obligation on their side, so that they can really contact us and we know how to work together, creating kind of a fusion center across organization, if you will.
Absolutely. And I would even add that, if you're the main party and you have many third parties, sometimes the third party is a smaller company, sometimes it's a bigger company, but many times a smaller company, there's always a discussion whether you should transfer some know-how to them so that they align their practices to you. That's one big point. The second point is, they could bring in an incident to you, or the other way around. You could actually cause problems to them. It goes in both sides. So they are more like partners in that sense. And I think that's why you mentioned properly that they should be involved in some of your drills and exercises, because they are an integral part of at least a number of the services you deliver. I think the one interesting part is, we obviously security, there's so many things happening, so many threats, so many issues, and we have only so limited resources. So DORA tries to institutionalize something which was the idea or the wish of so many, which is about threat intelligence sharing. Any comment about or view about that? Because it seems to now institutionalize the sharing. Before it was a nice thought or a nice idea, but now we seem to give it a bit of structure.
Absolutely. I'm a strong believer in the need for sharing threat intelligence amongst people within the same community. And you might remember that I built what we call the Cyber Hub, which is the threat intelligence information sharing across the entire finance organization in Switzerland, mandated by the government. And the idea was really we collectively work to help each other. So we share information, we collect threat intelligence from outside, but we also share information that has been collected from inside. So if we can share and if we can learn from each other collectively, we will be exponentially stronger. It's false to believe that as an organization, you can by your own stand against every type of attack. In my previous tenure at Microsoft, we had overall Microsoft had budget at $1 billion level, and we had thousands of cybersecurity experts. Yet we had some cybersecurity incident. So what I learned from that is there is strength in having a community. There is strength in working together and sharing threat intelligence. Whenever I had this example not that long ago, where the trading floor in one bank got subject to a specific attack. And it was the oil and gas trading floor in one bank, and immediately that bank contacted all the other banks which have a trading floor and told them, this is what is happening, these are the indicators, please watch specifically for that type of attack. So I cannot say enough about the value of sharing threat intelligence amongst the different organizations in the finance industry to me.
Absolutely, and I really encourage that. Hopefully, this is the beginning of putting a framework or putting a structure into this, and then hopefully this will be the base of the mechanics which are required to make this happen. Absolutely necessary.
Share
Um,
information. I mean, sharing information. I still see some organizations, including in the finance industry, where they believe that they're reluctant to share information because they think that this is a business advantage. It's not a business advantage. It definitely is not. The way you secure your environment is not a business advantage against a competitor, another bank or another insurance. Please share, work collectively.
I think now that we have to declare incidents, and I think things will become more obvious anyway. You have to declare they have an incident, so why won't you share with your peers? And the other way around, when it happens to them, you cannot keep things hidden anyway, and it's not what the defender side should do. And now you are kind of by regulation almost forced into that mechanism. So why don't you take a benefit of it in some sense? We mentioned a little bit GDPR in the past. Obviously, the incident response was the first time introduced in a big way on the European side, on that side. So I think that had a big impact on that side. And I think that's why the authorities will have piggybacked this
Surfing on the same
here.
wave, using the
Yeah.
same wave as GDPR. Yep.
Obviously, we have a few little bit more complicated things with when it's a cross border. I think we still have. I think we'll probably need a little bit of guidance of, obviously, I think the moral obligation are still there, but maybe the formal obligations may have to be expressed by the regulator what they expect on this side. Yeah.
Yes, my recent discussion with some CISOs of foreign financial institution, i.e., banks with headquarters outside of Europe, they got to me and they said, yes, we've got branches in Europe. We understand we are subject to DORA, but we're still quite in the dark as to how we got to operate if an incident happens in one of our branches in Europe. So there is a need for some clarification, but that's pretty normal. Time will give maturity to the regulator, and regulator will be able to observe the situation and hopefully come up with some good advice or regulation or mandate as to how to behave when you have this kind of cross-border situations. We're not yet there.
I think an interesting aspect, and we mentioned that in the first the DORA video. Obviously the DORA specifies also now that there could be fines to the management body, which means the board or the executive team, and it even mentioned that it could be to individual members. Yeah, and of course the fines are not for having an incident. The fine are typically for non-compliance. Yeah, when your process is not in place, when you have no detection in place, when you are never sharing with anybody or anything, or so that's where you get in trouble. It is when you're not in line with the specific guidance or the spirit at least of this. So I think keep that also in mind. It's not you not get fined for incidents. You get fined for non-complying to the main principles of the DORA side. Obviously, you have to get organized. We have said, okay, what we want to achieve, and I think it clearly said in DORA that the management bodies need to be knowledgeable about cybersecurity and things. So I think putting in place a framework which delivers finding incident response is important. Any thoughts on that side?
Well, it triggers some memories here. We had outside of Europe many times regulation coming and telling or mandating the board or executive directors to be responsible, to know about cybersecurity. Seldom seen, I've seldom witnessed this kind of mandate to really have a strong impact. So I hope that DORA will somewhat change the perspective, and board directors and executive committees will realize that this is their responsibility to understand and to mandate that the right things are being done inside the organization. So I'm hoping, because over the past 35 years, I've been disappointed many times that, believing that something would really trigger the senior executive and the board to really take their responsibilities. I'm hoping that here we will truly see the board of organizations to understand their full responsibility to make sure that DORA is implemented to the letter, and that they understand their roles in making sure that cybersecurity is taken very seriously. There's still a mix right now. It's still a little bit vague. Very often, the board director believe that the whole responsibility resides with the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer, and that's not accurate. So I hope DORA is going to evolve that.
I think clearly when you read DORA, it's they put a lot of responsibility on the managing body. It means both the board and the executive team. And I think so. It's important that the board asks to see, for example, what is our playbooks in case of incidents, and to maybe be part of drills,
Oh
where
yes, absolutely.
in
It's
many
great.
ways. But they can be. It goes beyond being a concept. Say, let's do the drills. Let's do it quarterly, half yearly, whatever, and to have the technical guys together with the different management parts be part of that. I think that is a good thing. And then see, okay, what's missing, and do we need to allocate more resources, or do we need to have more drills, or are there still unknowns in our decision making processes in terms of when incidents happening?
I so much agree with you, Guy. The beauty of involving or engaging the board people to attend these drills, these tabletop exercises, it's really an eye opener for them, and they start realizing the real impact. And very often, this is an opener for more budget or for them to listen to CISO's requirement. But it's also, and that's the strong positive thing to me, it's also an eye opener for them to for their responsibility to ask the right questions. Very often, board are not properly educated, properly aware on their responsibilities towards cybersecurity, and they fail to ask questions. What I expect a good board to do is to ask the right question, continuously ask the cybersecurity team or the executive team, have you tested this? Are you sure that your risk register is up to date and reflect the reality of our environment? Can you give me evidence of what's happening into other equivalent organizations over the world so that we know that we are ready for this kind of incident that have happened elsewhere? These are the responsibilities. These are the questions that I expect the board to ask. Seldom this happens. So I hope that DORA, by promoting this carrot and stick, is going to motivate the board directors to take that responsibility more closely to them.
Absolutely. So I think having a prioritization process on their side to make it clear what they expect, and also to make sure from their side that the resources are put behind this. I mean, there's no magic in this, and I think make it visible, and not rely on I guess we have something. That doesn't get you away with it anymore. And this, I remember, the fines are now at the personal level. Yeah. So that means that the spirit or the idea of the regulation is to put responsibilities to where they think it will matter to make the whole machinery work. And fast incident management is one, I believe, a big driver. And I think that's I think part of our bonus advice to you, there are two or three things in this regulation which are there to make the regulation work, to make everybody better at cybersecurity, and not give you a list of controls and list of checkpoints to be done. I think there is a few management dynamics put in the essence of the regulation, and the incident response is one. But I guess we can talk about the other two. I think you have the testing, which comes also later. So maybe some of you may have heard about the Tiber testing. That's also using threat intelligence. You're going to be, normally you think, well, there's only about third parties and a couple of things. I think the important thing is DORA doesn't cover everything. There are many things DORA doesn't cover because it focuses on a few key new points or emphasized points, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to do a lot of other basic hygiene, basic protection things. I think that is so important because the purpose of the whole thing is you not getting hacked, not only to be compliant to a regulation. I think once you get hacked, there is clearly you cannot have been doing the right things in most cases. So remember, I believe that's my personal advice, and I would like to have your opinion. The main purpose is not to get hacked. Yeah, the regulation are giving you tools and means and advice how to get organized, how to make that less likely. But once you do the testing, and in the testing, which is a technical testing, it's technical testing of your incident detection, testing of your preventive control. And if you fail the testing, you'll suddenly have lots of things to be done on that once, and possibly get in trouble at some point later if you don't do it. So there's also technical controls which are hidden a little bit, like backdoors in this door regulation. If you want to pass a testing may be the most severe thing, because that will happen anyway. The incident hopefully will not happen, and you have to prepare for it. I think this is a second point, and I think the third point is, there's obviously fines. There's fines for non-compliance, not fines for incidents. Yeah. And if it turns out that you have not done a number of things which were expected from you, which were normal, which were specified by DORA, obviously then things could become more complicated. Yeah. Any advice? I mean, this is our personal advice to this. Take DORA seriously, but take also a higher level view about what is the whole purpose of all this.
I could not agree more. The two things I would like to say. Over the past many years, we have seen lots of financial regulations covering cybersecurity that went the wrong way, to the point where it's not unusual for a finance organization to have two cybersecurity teams, one focused on making sure they don't get hacked and one focused on addressing all the questions the regulator might ask. Sometimes the questions or the requirement from the regulators don't necessarily make lots of sense in the context of being effectively protected. DORA is better than that. I like DORA in a sense that everything I see in DORA seems to be going the right direction, and they are not going the direction of asking the organization to really spend a lot of time doing things that they might believe are useless, because it's not going to address the real cybersecurity aspect. DORA seems to ask the organization to do the right thing. And so incident response, to have proper incident response, is definitely a key one to me. I must say, as you said, Guy, the main objective is to avoid getting hacked. It's absolutely true. That's paramount. But equally important, the way an organization is judged is, once it's being hacked, is on the way it reacts, on the way it addresses the incident, on the level of transparency, on yes. Once you are hacked, once you have a significant incident, you will have to open the kimono, and people will look at exactly what kind of protection you have. And so incident response is a part where you can salvage the entire situation. If you have a proper incident response mechanism, people will respect you. People will say, yes, you got hacked, because everybody can be hacked, but you had a proper mechanism in place to minimize the impact for you and for your customers. And so the way you implement your incident response has got a significant impact on the way you will be perceived, and perhaps the type of reputation that will attach itself to you as a senior executive or a board director in the organization, or to the organization. So I cannot stress enough how important proper incident response is. And again, I'm repeating myself. From that perspective, DORA is going the right direction. Is asking organization to do the right thing.
My feeling was that, if you do the proper response, besides avoiding fines for non-compliance, I think you can, as you said, you can reduce the impact almost by 66%, 2/3 in my mind.
I agree.
So it is in your benefit, and not only for compliance reasons, but for yourself as a financial institution, and your financial or reputational impact to be done. I think. Sorry.
No, I totally agree with you. It reminds me, I very recently did a tabletop exercise, and we did cyber risk quantification prior and after. And so we could demonstrate that by having a proper incident response, exactly what you said, we dropped the impact by a factor of 60%. So that is, 60%. So the amount of machines that would be infected, and the spread of the incident would be significantly reduced just by the fact of having a proper incident response in place. So yes, definitely this can be quantified and demonstrated. So you're absolutely right.
I think that's the end of our video on incident response. As I said, I recommend you to look also at the previous ones. And there were lots of information in this video. So we'll have a file which contains the main points of our discussion as a download. Please consult the show notes for that. And I think there are many angles to this very critical, and I think very critical not only now but also in the future topic. So we would certainly appreciate your comments on this YouTube video. Please give us your experience, share with us your experience, give us your view. I think that can only benefit the community. So I encourage you to do so.
It's all right.
And
Yes.
Again, Pierre, thanks so much for having shared with our audience and with me your insights into DORA and the wisdom you gained in terms of how to do proper incident management. So thank you so
Pleasure
much
is
for that.
mine. Thank you very much.